Greetings. Don't forget to hit the bell for all notifications if you haven't done so already. Let me refresh your memory with the stories of official science that the masters of this world have allowed the unwashed servants to know. These facts are not just available, but they are forcibly available, that is, they are injected under pressure into the minds of slaves even in kindergarten, so that the truth does not flood by itself. The moon is a natural satellite of the Earth, always facing us on one side. There is no atmosphere on the moon, so it is terribly cold at night and hellishly hot during the day. The moon is 4 times smaller than the Earth and the distance to it is 384,000 kilometers. The moon is covered with craters that are easy to see even with an amateur telescope. The moon shines at night with the reflected light of the sun. On the growing moon, evil sorcerers do nasty things, and on the waning moon, good sorceresses get rid of these nasty things. The moon draws the water of the oceans and governs the ovulation of women. No one has ever seen the far side of the moon, with the exception of American astronauts. Well, if only to fly to the moon, then to the far side, 2 birds with 1 stone. The photo shown is taken directly from Wikipedia. Note the oddity: at the current level of development of electronic telescopes, the main encyclopedia of the world uploads a black and white photo of the moon. I will say more, you will not find a color photograph in principle. Nowhere. Photoshop doesn't count. Strange, isn't it? Even the eye sees the moon as a pale yellow, and the lenses of pseudoscience insist that the moon is black and white. Okay, this is for starters. As you know, the grander the lie, the more willingly they believe in it. And it is also known that as soon as the truth begins to leak out, Hollywood urgently makes a movie. Apparently, in the middle of the last century, the world's luminaries of science got to the bottom of something that they were not supposed to know, and in the circles of astrophysicists a riot was ripe that knocked down the stability of the throne of the Predictor, so Hollywood concocted a quick landing of clowns in diving suits in a pavilion with black wallpaper. According to the herd management concept, it is dangerous to create a lie in one version, because the crowd is motley, so the scriptwriters of the lunar performance blended several versions of the lie, to each according to his faith. The moon is an artificial satellite made of titanium. Aliens live inside the moon and are about to attack us. On the dark side of the moon, the bases of our presidents. American astronauts saw a crashed intergalactic ship, so there was silence on the air for a minute. Such nonsense is churned out every month, just to divert the attention of the wise men from the truth. But the most exotic version is described in the Deep book, where the moon is represented by a giant generator called Destiny, or moon rainbow. The brother of 5, of course, gives everything correctly, but he only calls the wrong moon the moon, but more on that in other articles. So what about the Americans? Really, landing on the moon was not? Take it wider, there was nowhere to land, because there is no moon. Rather, there is a pale yellow crescent in the night sky, but there is no and cannot be that moon, which we are told about. Let's go back to the beginning of the article and analyze the facts that they are injected under pressure. Among them there are inconsistencies that are incompatible with the life of the moon myth. So, let's start the hit parade of blunders about the moon from the lips of official science. Number 1. The moon shines by the reflected light of the sun. Yeah? Hang the ball on the street and shine a powerful flashlight on it, at least xenon. Will it illuminate surrounding objects? No. And the moon illuminates, and how? On a full moon, you can safely read a book. But it's not even about the ability to illuminate. Take a closer look at the ball. In the center is a light flare from a lantern, because any spherical object reflects light unevenly, and always with a flare in the center. This is physics and it is relentless. Looks like Luna is not familiar with her, which is a pity, because any professional photographer will confirm this phenomenon. A logical conclusion suggests itself: either the moon is flat, therefore there is no glare, or it glows from the inside with its own light. In this case there will also be no glare. Next on lighting. Why, when the crescent is minimal, is the circumference of the moon outlined by a light contour? What is this light? Even if it had an atmosphere that would scatter sunlight, there would be no luminous edging. We on Earth see the night sky as black. Science. and here came up with an excuse and called this phenomenon ashen light of the moon. Ash light of the moon, the glow of the surface of the moon not illuminated by direct sunlight is formed by sunlight scattered by the earth, and then secondarily reflected by the moon to the earth. Thus, the root of the moon's ashen light photons is sun, earth, moon, earth. After reading this quote, two problems arise. Firstly, you need to understand the meaning of the three-story phrase, and secondly, to believe in the incredible delusional nature of the described scheme. And how did you want? It is incredibly difficult to lie, especially on a global scale, so you have to carry such nonsense and pin orders to scientists for sensational discoveries. Ash light is the second argument in favor of the moon's own light source. Take a look at the photo again, a real ceiling. And the last thing about the lighting, the brains finally boil when the crescent moon looks with its horns at the sunset or even down to the earth. Such devilry can be observed several times a week. Pictures are immediately removed from the network because they are too dangerous for the herd. The light of what, let me know, reflects the moon in such cases? In general, there have been a lot of questions for astronomers regarding the illumination of the moon, but they are simply not taken to be noticed, because since childhood we have been told, look at your feet, and not at the sky. Number 2. Disproportion. Many have noticed how huge the moon is near the horizon, but as it rises, it miraculously shrinks. Scientists justify that our eyes are slanting, and it seems to us, they even offer to cover the moon with a gun front sight, first at the horizon, and then at apogee, assuring that the ratio with the front sight will not change. Agree, a rude excuse for the architects of such a delicate mechanism. This is moonrise in London in 2011. Has anyone tried to close such a fly? Number 3. We always see one side of the moon. Any sane person at least once wondered, what the hell is the moon always looking at one side? This is how you need to calculate the elliptical orbits of the moon, Earth, Sun around each other, and even taking into account the mutual attraction of all these objects. Even under the most ideal conditions, in 100, 1,000, or 1,000,000 years, the course of the moon should have deviated at least a degree, but this does not happen. Moreover, there are no ideal conditions, especially in the harsh conditions of space. Even the solar wind had to interfere with the stability of the moon's position. Well, straight, the conclusion suggests itself that it was glued like a postage stamp. Number 4. Ebb and flow. As science tells us, the moon is not just magnetized to the earth with its muzzle, it also pulls the oceans towards itself like a blanket. This is the same as a tightrope walker balancing over the abyss and at the same time unwinding a rope with a weight around his elbow, without moving at all. In addition, if the moon has such a huge impact on the world ocean, then the connection here is two-way, therefore, the ocean also has an impact on the moon. Therefore, any tsunami should have shaken the stability of the moon, which never happened. Number 5. Lunar craters. The solar wind, electromagnetic waves, the gravity of other celestial bodies, the ebbs and flows of the oceans, it's all baby talk compared to mass strikes, that is, bombardment with meteorites and other space debris, and the craters there are not frail, as astronomy teaches. Such a blow can not only spin the moon like a top, but also kick it off its former orbit, so much so that all the seas and oceans on Earth will go berserk and another flood is inevitable. If someone does not know, then the Earth's atmosphere is bombarded by thousands of small and medium-sized pebbles per day, which simply burn up in the atmosphere. Considering that the moon has no atmosphere, it should spin in the sky like a ball in a pond, but no, the moon stands rooted to the spot on its parabolic rails. Number 6. Full moon. This is the most stupid blunder. This is a control shot to the head of the moon myth. Any sane person without any equipment and a PhD in physics can smash the moon myth to smithereens by asking just one question: who pays for the moon to shine on a full moon? Look carefully at the full moon, it's a perfect circle. And where does the light have to fall in order for the sphere to be reflected in a perfect circle? That's right, because of our backs, but here's a hitch: there is no sun behind our backs and cannot be. The Earth is behind us, and the sun is behind the Earth. Can someone explain to me who's the hell the moon reflects on a full moon? What does mainstream science think about this? The full moon is the phase of the moon when the difference between the ecliptic longitudes of the sun and the moon is 180 degrees. This means that the plane drawn through the sun, earth and moon is perpendicular to the plane of the ecliptic. If all three objects are on the same line, a lunar eclipse occurs. The full moon looks like a regular luminous disk. Note that no one pulled Wikipedia by the tongue. The moon in the full moon looks like a regular luminous disk. If you give Wikipedia's ornate quotes a human appearance, you get the following. On a full moon, the sun is strictly behind our back horizontally, but looks out a little because of the earth vertically. The strange thing is that Wiki does not give a diagram of such a complex phenomenon. And not in vain. Yes, because it will look like this. The slightest shift of the sun to the side turns the moon into an incomplete disk. A full moon is impossible because it goes against the principles of light reflection. Behind our back, the sun is covered by the earth, therefore the moon should not be visible at all, and this phenomenon is called. So, what do we do with the full moon, which spat on the textbook of physics and astronomy and continues to hang in the sky, regardless of what they write about it? As we have seen, the official version of the structure of the moon is not comparable with the life of the moon itself, which means that it is arranged differently. As for the phenomenon of the full moon, one of two conditions must be met here. 1. The moon should be flat, like a road sign. Then the deviation of the sun by a few degrees will not play a role in the illumination and we will see a perfectly round disk. 2. The moon must glow with its own light. Then it doesn't really matter where the sun is. Contrary to these two conditions, a flying object named the moon cannot exist. A video taken on camera through a telescope is circulating on the net on our topic. The author claims that we see a hologram in the sky, which is projected with interference. The whole point of this video is precisely in these noises, which are well filmed. The authenticity of this video is not known, perhaps another video trick, but it is curious to see. As the saying goes, if something happens, then someone needs it. So what is the moon and why is it covered in such a layer of lies? As always, no one hit the answer. It is right under our noses, in the Bible. Fooled astronomers have no time to read it, and the status forbids climbing and even more so relying on religious heresy. This is on the one hand. On the other hand, there is a fooled flock who are forbidden to ask questions and think in general, especially about astronomy. So they live in parallel worlds and two fragmented parts of one earth never intersect, science and religion. So the Bible, Genesis, chapter 1, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to separate the day from the night, and for signs, and times, and days, and years." And God created two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the smaller light to rule the night, and the stars. And God set them in the firmament of heaven to shine upon the earth. As we can see, the biblical description of the moon is a complete absurdity from the point of view of official science. The Bible insists that the lamps are sealed to one firmament, therefore, the distance to the sun, the moon and all the stars is the same. The Bible is rewritten every generation, but for some reason the ink has not been removed. About the structure of our sky, apparently, they left it purely to me. The whole joke is that the absurd biblical model suddenly abruptly ceases to cause laughter, as it explains all the oddities described above. You can't argue against the facts in the sky, which means they need to be studied and laid out in a mosaic, which we will do now. So, based on the above elaboration of blunders, we can draw the following conclusions. The moon is a lamp, which in its size is far from officially declared. The shape is either a sphere/hemisphere, or a flat circle, but definitely with its own light source. In other words, this is a flying cinema. The audience sits on the earth, and the screen floats in the air, onto which a light image of the surface with all its craters is projected, and the light beam is also adjusted to form the desired phase from the rim to the full moon. The only fundamental difference from the usual cinema is the projection of the image not from behind our head, but from the inside of the screen. Anyone who has not missed the logical thread of our conversation will now ask a reasonable question: how then does the moon have such a powerful effect on the Earth's biosphere, if it's just a dummy? After all, The phases of the moon really affect many factors: the growth of hair, nails, seedlings in the garden beds. People associated with magic are generally firmly attached to the phases of the moon. And why all this theater of the absurd, and even with such difficulties in brainwashing the population? The answer is again in the Bible, for signs. The moon is just an indicator. Just as a blinking turn signal of a car indicates that the driver is about to turn, so the phases of the moon inform magicians on Earth in which phase the central processor of our planet is now, the star sphere called Olympus. Remember who you are. Take care of yourself, Ray. Love you.